A strong, united country rallying around a single leader. This is the dream of every dictator, what Hitler, Mussolini and Franco wanted. Any deviation from the established order must be snuffed out. Socialists and communists, anarchists and gypsies, homosexuals and Jews. But there is an even more insidious enemy, unmentioned in history books. Freemasonry. What are the men in aprons conspiring in their temples? What plots are they hatching against the nation? Unanswered questions that rack the nerves of dictators at night. This is the story of World War II, seen through the eyes of history's most famous secret association. Summer 1945. The war in Europe is over. The entire continent is in ruins. There are millions of refugees and very little food for everyone. German society has collapsed, together with its infrastructure. Europe is reliant on foreign aid, and the United States has become a reliable partner. US President Harry Truman decides to send a commission to Europe, led by Ray Denslow, former Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Masoni. He is troubled by reports on the current state of Freemasonry and aims to rescue the lodges after years of Nazi-fascist oppression. This is quite normal, for Truman himself is a Freemason, as his predecessor, Franklin D. Roosevelt. As were all the presidents traced back to President George Washington.
As a past Grand Master of the great state of Missouri, I'm very much interested in the Masonic Service Association. When our boys come marching home victorious, none will look askance and say, "Where was Freemasonry in this hour of need?"
For 5 weeks, Ray Denslow, along with 3 other Masons, journey throughout Europe. He sees with his own eyes the destruction in the capitals of Europe. He meets with Masons and offers them the support of American Freemasonry. This is his diary, remaining unpublished until 2018.
Brethren, we have just returned from one of the most interesting assignments in our Masonic life, an investigation of the status of Freemasonry in the occupied countries of Europe after 6 years of war. To Hitler and Mussolini, Freemasonry was an organization which might interfere with their plans. In Spain, they found a fellow adventurer in the person of General Franco. We left New York City in the early morning hours of August 12, 1945, by way of transatlantic clipper. We here set forth the conditions as we found them.
A few days later, the Masonic Commission lands in Rome. Italy had been the birthplace of fascism, and Mussolini, from the very outset, had been an enemy of Freemasonry. But Rome is also the seat of the Roman Catholic Church, Freemasonry's ancestral enemy. Denslow immediately notices an anomaly.
Most of the Italian Freemasons are Catholic. which is a matter requiring considerable explanation to the American Freemason.
Where does this anomaly come from? The answer can be found on the eastern wall of a Masonic temple. On it is an acronym which states for "To the glory of the great architect of the universe." Who is the great architect of the universe for Freemasons? It may seem like a depiction of the Catholic God, but in fact, it is much more than that. It represents all religions and beliefs, especially faith in a reason. However, there is indeed an element of blending of religions. Every Masonic meeting begins with a passage from the Gospel of John in the Bible.
In principio era il Verbo, e il Verbo era presso Dio, e il Verbo era Dio.
Natasha Linstead is a professor at the University of Essex and author of several books exploring the psychology of 20th century dictators.
The Freemasons actually believe in God or some sort of supreme being, so they're not atheists. They believe that all religions are equal.
For the first time, Alfredo Jacopozzi, a member of the Catholic clergy, director of the High Institute of Religious Science in Florence, gives the Church's point of view on the topic from within a Masonic temple.
Grande architetto dell'universo e Dio sono sicuramente due prospettive diverse, che però nella cultura occidentale in particolare si intersecano. Il Dio come architetto dell'universo è una realtà che è stata elaborata, pensata dentro l'universo occidentale cristiano.
What is Freemasonry? It is an initiatory association officially founded in London in 1717. However, some documents trace it back far earlier. Its members take an oath to work on self-improvement and to improve society as a whole while abiding by the laws of their country. The Brotherhood soon spreads throughout the world, advocating for values like freedom, equality, and fraternity. These same values are the basis of the French and American revolutions and the Charter of Human Rights. Taking that into account, the conflict with the Roman Catholic Church was inevitable. Just 21 years after its foundation, in 1738, Pope Clement XII Corsini banned Freemasonry with a papal decree.
Il fiorentino Papa Corsini scomunicò la massoneria con questa lettera apostolica e se andiamo a leggerla attentamente, questa lettera ci fa vedere come in qualche modo la condanna è stata molto più rigida rispetto alle ragioni, perché le ragioni sembrano ragioni di Stato.
For more than 1,000 years, the popes ruled over a large part of central Italy as kings, exercising their authority. Up until the unification of Italy, when the Church's political power came to an end in 1870, thanks also to the contribution of Freemasonry. The iconic hero of this feat was the Mason Giuseppe Garibaldi. To honor him for his deeds, he was elevated to the 33rd and highest degree. Rome has a place of honor for him. The equestrian monument to the hero of two worlds stands on Il Gianicolo, a hill which dominates the city. At first, the statue was placed as if defiantly looking down on the Vatican. Later, at the Pope's request, the statue was turned around, as it remains to this day. The end of the 19th century had been the golden age of Italian Freemasonry. Town squares and streets were filled with plaques and statues honoring the most famous Freemasons. In 1899, a statue of Giordano Bruno, philosopher and martyr for the cause of free thinking, was placed in the famous Campo de' Fiori in Rome, where he was burnt at the stake by the Inquisition 4 centuries before as a heretic. In 1914, World War I began. Over 4 years, European countries fought a devastating war. Italy entered the war a year later, in 1915, pressured by King Victor Emmanuel III and Freemasonry, despite the wishes of the population at large. At the end of the war, even the winners, like Italy, were socially and economically destroyed. Gabriele D'Annunzio, Italian poet, World War I hero and Freemason, coined the term maimed victory. In this context, a new player appeared on the Italian political scene, Benito Mussolini.
Mussolini was very charismatic, narcissistic, an egomaniac, paranoid, and prone to manic depressive behaviors. He believed that he was born to save Italy from all of its problems, and he was incredibly committed to this goal of ruling Italy, bringing it back to its golden age, and doing it by any means necessary.
Despite being a fervent socialist, the first act of Mussolini's new political stance was carried out in 1919 in Milan, embodied in the fascist groups. How did Freemasonry react to the birth of fascism? Anna Maria Isastia is a professor of contemporary history at Sapienza University in Rome.
La massoneria italiana, commettendo lo stesso errore dei politici liberali, è convinta di poter cavalcare il fascismo e poi di poterlo controllare e renderlo inoffensivo una volta abbattuto il pericolo bolscevico.
Per la massoneria nell'Italia del dopoguerra i nemici erano due. Da un lato il mondo cattolico, dall'altra parte il socialismo, ed ecco che c'è in mezzo questa forza politica nuova, il movimento dei fasci di combattimento.
On October 28, 1922, tens of thousands of fascists march on the capital to force the king's hand and seize power. Mussolini is in Milan, waiting for the signal to join them. Either out of cowardice or miscalculation, King Victor Emmanuel III hands over Italy to Mussolini. That day, Mussolini's 4 collaborators lead the multitude of fascists. 3 of them, Italo Balbo, Emilio De Bono, and Cesare Maria De Vecchi, are Freemasons. The event marks the beginning of the fascist era. Florence is one of the most important hubs of Italian Freemasonry. Fulvio Conti, professor of contemporary history at the University of Florence, found in the archives of the Historical Institute of the Resistance an extraordinary piece of evidence that certifies Freemasonry's support for fascism.
Questa lettera di Federico Cerasola del 9 novembre 1922, quindi siamo a una decina di giorni dalla marcia su Roma, in cui scrive al Gran Maestro: fino a questo momento ho dato ai fasci 700.000 lire, conto di arrivare almeno ai 2 milioni. Per me è la smoking gun, come si dice, la prova incontrovertibile di un finanziamento molto consistente. La massoneria e il primo fascismo parlano con lo stesso linguaggio.
Freemasonry's financial support for fascism is substantial, the equivalent of 1.9 million euros, over $2 million. However, Freemasonry's support is also political. The Grand Master of the Grand Orient of Italy himself, Domizio Torrigiani, repeatedly supports Mussolini with manifestos, interviews and letters. Freemasonry has taken sides, but it bets on the wrong horse. Mussolini does not want to have constraints on his power. Soon, the fascist movement, which seeks to become a regime, will have to make a choice.
Fra un potere forte, la massoneria, che tale più non era, e una Chiesa cattolica che invece aveva una grande influenza sia in Italia che all'estero, Mussolini non ebbe alcun dubbio e scelse di cercare l'accordo con la Chiesa cattolica.
Il progetto culturale e politico di Mussolini era in qualche modo reinstaurare il Sacro Romano Impero, cioè trovare anche e soprattutto l'appoggio della Chiesa cattolica.
Mussolini capisce, andato al potere, che ha bisogno della Chiesa cattolica. Due forze, due poteri, due realtà che vogliono la caduta dei massoni.
Despite being a Republican and anti-clerical in his youth, Mussolini is also unscrupulous and determined. It is not difficult for him to come to terms with the Roman Catholic Church.
Mussolini veniva da una storia di anticlericalismo verboso, aggressivo, e si convertì tranquillamente, se non a un cattolicesimo praticante, quantomeno a una linea di realpolitik che si sarebbe conclusa nel 1929 con la firma dei patti lateranensi.
For 60 years, the popes had considered themselves prisoners of the Italian state, locked up inside the Vatican Palace. With the Lateran Pacts signed in 1929 between the Kingdom of Italy and the Holy See, Mussolini put an end to the long-standing rift that began with the conquest of Rome in 1870. He grants the Holy See sovereignty over the territory of Vatican City, acknowledging and recognizing Roman Catholicism as the state religion. Amended only slightly in 1984, the Lateran Pacts are still the basis for relations between the Church and the Italian state. The signing of the Lateran Treaty was the result of 6 years of negotiations between the fascist regime and the Roman Catholic Church. As early as 1923, the conditions dictated by Cardinal Pietro Gasparri, the Vatican Secretary of State, for the conclusion of the negotiations were clear: settling scores with Freemasonry.
Dice Gasparri nelle sue memorie che l'ostacolo vero verso il raggiungimento di un accordo fra Stato e Chiesa era rappresentato dalla massoneria e dalla presenza massonica in Parlamento. tutto questo verrà spazzato via da Mussolini nel giro di poco tempo.
In 1925, Mussolini launches a direct attack. He passes a law banning secret associations, which is in effect aimed at Freemasonry.
La legge sulle società segrete impone al Gran Maestro Domizio Torigiani l'autoscioglimento del Grande Oriente d'Italia. Da quel momento la massoneria ufficialmente non esiste più in Italia. In Italia per circa 20 anni non si svolgono lavori rituali massonici, ma la cosa è comprensibilissima se si pensa a quelli che sono i requisiti logistici indispensabili per un'attività massonica. Un tempio che deve essere di almeno 40 metri quadri, il pavimento a scacchi, le colonne, le squadre, i compassi, le spade. Sarebbe bastata alla polizia fascista entrare in possesso di uno soltanto di questi utensili massonici e sarebbero già messi sulle tracce dei fratelli.
Domizio Torigiani's fate is the same as other Freemasons and political opponents. He's marginalized from political life, forced to flee in France, and then arrested when he returns to Italy.
Torrigiani, Grand Master of the Grand Orient, spent many years in prison on the island of Lipari and died a martyr to the Masonic cause.
During these years, many Italian Freemasons hold secret meetings. Few gestures and symbolic objects used undercover are not enough for a legitimate Masonic meeting, but they are enough to keep hope alive, waiting for better times. Masonic lodges have been closed down for 7 years, but Mussolini is mindful of plans to overthrow his regime and continues to fear the Masons' return from exile. And so, in 1932, the Duce pronounces scathing insults during a speech in Turin.
Per questi residui o residuati di tutte le logge è veramente uno scandalo inaudito che ci sia l'Italia fascista.
Freemasonry becomes the bogeyman, the ideal enemy for every occasion. It does not matter whether it actually exists, provided one believes it does. This is the National Temple of the Grand Lodge of Italy in Rome. Italian writer Giovanni Fasanella has studied and published in his books Mussolini's many secret papers preserved in the London archives of Kew Gardens. They include reports from the secret services, the OVRA, the infamous political police, anonymous letters, wiretaps, all of which ended up on Mussolini's desk.
Mussolini raccoglieva tutto quello che era possibile raccogliere da ogni angolo della penisola, materiali che la polizia segreta gli forniva sulle abitudini dei suoi camerati. E questo serviva a Mussolini per avere costantemente il polso della situazione.
A veritable information network set up by the Duce, in which the theme of the Masonic conspiracy recurs consistently.
Anche dopo lo scioglimento della Masoneria, Mussolini fu ossessionato dalle logge perché gran parte dei gerarchi fascisti erano massoni. Mussolini lo sapeva benissimo.
While the secrecy of the lodges is a threat to his power, it is also a powerful tool for him to blackmail anyone.
Una delle accuse più ricorrenti che si leggeva in quei rapporti era che si trattava di un massone. Probabilmente eravamo in presenza già allora di quel fenomeno che oggi viene definito delle fake news costruite ad arte per danneggiare un avversario o un concorrente.
This is Mussolini's strategy against Freemasonry. Earn their support to gain power, then turn about with brutal repression. Eventually, the use of the Masonic conspiracy theory as an instrument to generate a climate of distrust strengthens the dictator's hold on the population. This strategy works brilliantly in Italy and serves as a model for many other dictators.
Dictators have an unrelenting lust for power, and they are constantly concerned about their own survival. They will try to maintain themselves in power no matter what. One of the things about Freemasonry is it was very secretive, it was somewhat hard to define, it was hard to really know how many members there might even be. It was hard to know what they really thought. And it was also composed of some of the most skilled members in society. And all of these things were really, really frightening for these dictators, who feared plots and who feared the unknown and who wanted to have control over everything.
In the 1930s, Italy is respected, even studied, serving as a model to other countries. Then there is Benito Mussolini, the Duce, a true example for many politicians eager to emerge from anonymity. For Francisco Franco, a Spanish general stationed in Africa, the opportunity came in 1936.
The Spanish Civil War affected all European powers. Both Mussolini and Hitler favored the rise of General Francisco Franco.
This is the temple of the Grand Lodge of Spain in Madrid. Ivan Pozuelo is a Spanish journalist and historian, member of the Center for Historical Studies on Spanish Freemasonry.
La reacción de la masonería española ante el golpe de Estado de Franco fue más bien tibia, incluso silenciosa. Oficialmente no dijeron nada, estaban expectantes de qué pasa y qué tipo de golpe de Estado iba a ser. Según cómo iba a acabar ese golpe de Estado, pues iban a tomar una postura u otra.
As in Italy, Freemasonry in Spain will pay a very high price.
Una vez que se supo el carácter del golpe de Estado, que era un carácter muy violento y de casi aniquilación de ciertos sectores de población española, pues los masones vieron que ellos eran una de las víctimas. Es más, en los primeros días ya hubo fusilamientos de masones en masa. Franco va construyendo esa actitud antimasónica ya en los primeros meses del golpe de Estado. Ya en septiembre del 36 decreta, llegamos a hacer una resolución contra la masonería. Está muy claro, los masones hay que aniquilarlos. No hay ninguna otra opción. Eso significa destrucción de templos, significa fusilamientos y significa incluso destrucción de simbología en los cementerios. Es un intento de borrar de la historia de España la historia de la masonería española.
Who is Francisco Franco? He is the second of 5 children in a family that is split in two. The eldest son, Nicolas, and the youngest, Ramon, are the favorites of their father, an extroverted man and also a Freemason.
Franco had the greatest hatred for the Masons. Both his father and his brother were members of the Masons, and he had a very difficult relationship with both of them, but particularly with his father, who was more of an intellectual and who looked down upon Franco during his whole entire life.
Francisco, on the other hand, is introverted and reserved, resembling his very religious mother, María del Pilar.
No conocemos mucho la vida privada de Franco. Sabemos sí que tiene un capellán, que reza el rosario cada día, que en la Semana Santa suspende las ejecuciones de muerte.
Franco thought that the Masons represented a huge threat because at the time, just as he was about to take power, the Masons constituted 1/3 of the Spanish parliament. So they had a little bit more power than their actual numbers demonstrated.
Among the many hypotheses to explain Franco's relentless hatred for Freemasonry, one suggests that he tried to join the Brotherhood and was rejected.
Luego, sobre la pertenencia o no pertenencia de Franco a la masonería, que no le dejaron entrar y que por eso es el odio que tiene a los masones, esto viene de un testimonio oral. Dicen que ha intentado entrar en Larache y en Madrid, que de ambas le fue denegada la entrada. Y es curioso porque son 2 logias a las que Ramón Franco también se dice que perteneció.
It is not known for sure if he actually ever asked to be admitted. One thing is certain, religion will play a much more important role in his Spain. The Spanish Civil War is a fight between worldviews, between monarchy and republic, communism and fascism, atheism and Catholicism. Both sides fight viciously. Between 1936 and 1939, the Republican Front destroys 70% of all Catholic churches and kills 10,000 members of the clergy. Franco sets himself up as a champion of the conservative world, a bulwark in support of Catholicism, fighting against the Republican world, the breeding ground of Freemasons.
Todas las crisis sociales, económicas, políticas eran productos, según ellos, de la mano negra, ¿no? de esa masonería, cuando lo que la mano negra eran la suya, quien conspiraban eran ellos. Además se puede ver claramente precisamente con el golpe de Estado. Las razones del sentimiento antimasónico de Franco son varias, pero nos podemos quedar con una, que es la de creerse lo que dijo la Iglesia Católica durante unos siglos sobre la masonería, acusándola, digamos, de todos los males que habían producido en España.
Il cattolicesimo spagnolo è un cattolicesimo piuttosto conservatore, piuttosto intransigente. Nei rapporti col mondo politico, in particolare repubblicano, la Chiesa appunto era in situazione di conflitto e quindi la salita al potere di Franco fu in qualche modo una liberazione da parte della Chiesa. E anche se all'inizio il clero spagnolo era piuttosto ostile a Franco, però nel momento in cui il movimento repubblicano cominciò a scagliarsi contro la Chiesa, è chiaro che il clero si buttò a braccia aperte verso Franco. Franco ha favorito molto la Chiesa con leggi ad hoc. Tutto questo ha fatto sì che franchismo e Chiesa andassero di pari passo.
Franco was able to tap into what some segments of Spanish society really wanted. to return to a traditional way of living. They weren't in favor of moving towards modernity or towards democracy. And Franco appeared as a beacon of stability, as someone Spanish public could count on.
What better way than public speeches to inform the conservatives of his struggle against Freemasonry?
Los discursos de Franco sobre masonería, contra la masonería, comienzan desde el momento en que accede al poder y terminan el último año. O sea, el último discurso de Franco es contra la masonería. Todos los discursos en público siempre utilizaba a la masonería internacional, utilizando palabras como que era lo peor. O sea, la masonería era el demonio.
No ha habido en nuestra nación ninguna rebelión ni conato de traición contra la patria que no se fraguase en la sombra de las logias masónicas. Y aún hoy, liberada España de esta carroña, todavía esas insignificantes marejadas políticas, por mucho que se disfracen, obedecen siempre a la intriga y a la oculta inspiración de los masones expatriados.
Franco's personality was different to Hitler's and Mussolini's. Franco had this very high-pitched voice and wasn't particularly captivating to an audience. Franco was also very conservative and didn't have that ability to really connect with people.
La Iglesia Católica en las homilías, en sus sermones, fue uno de los principales productores y propagadores de la antimasonería, además de las creencias católicas, de creer que la masonería era una asociación producto del demonio, de Satán.
La Chiesa ha in qualche modo benedetto tutte quelle situazioni in cui lo Stato totalitario ha condannato la massoneria. I totalitarismi del Novecento sono un capitolo davvero drammatico della nostra storia politica. Parlando dal punto di vista della Chiesa Cattolica, il cercare l'appoggio di questi totalitarismi è stato un disastro profondo.
For Franco, the war against Freemasonry is a war in every respect. Every war leads to suffering, pain, and oppression. Juan José Morales, professor of the history of Freemasonry, tells us his family's story.
Yo tengo algún documento en donde los periódicos en la portada dicen haremos campos de concentración para los judíos, los masones, los comunistas, los republicanos, etc. Estos señores se permiten el lujo de decir haremos y lo hacen, pero lo que no sabemos hoy cuantificar todavía es el número de muertos. Mi padre está en Madrid. Cuando acaba la Guerra Civil Española es del bando republicano y lo mandan a un campo de trabajos forzados en el Pirineo aragonés. Yo he estado en el lugar donde mi padre estuvo haciendo nada. Era un castigo, una persecución, una brutal represión.
It is hard to keep a tally of this brutal repression. Some estimates are in the tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dead anti-Francoists during or after the war.
Franco reprimió sin piedad, sin remordimiento. Siempre digo que quien más asesinó a españoles fue Franco de toda la historia. No asesinó a franceses, a belgas, ni a rusos. Asesinó a españoles. Y dentro de estas categorías que ellos tenían, el de los masones era una de sus cuestiones prioritarias de aniquilar, tanto físicamente, moralmente, como desde la historia. Es que no fueron 1 año, ni 2 años, ni 3 años, ni 5 años, ni 10 años. Fueron casi 40 años con el mismo pensamiento antimasónico y la misma actitud antimasónica.
Federico García Lorca is among the victims of the wrath of Francoism. On the 19th of August 1936, the famous poet is captured and executed without trial. Like many others, he too is charged with the unspeakable crime, being a Freemason. This is the only known film footage of García Lorca taken in Montevideo while on holiday.
Mataron a Federico cuando la luz asomaba. El pelotón de verdugos no osó mirarle la cara. Todos cerraron los ojos, rezaron, ni Dios te salva. Muerto cayó Federico, sangre en la frente y plomo en las entrañas.
With these words, Antonio Machado, Lorca's personal friend and also a Freemason, laments his death in poetry.
Dentro de las múltiples leyendas que hay, pues hay también la de que se utilizó la acusación de masón para asesinar a García Lorca. Y la verdad es que no fue así. A García Lorca lo asesinaron por comunista, por homosexual, por poeta y por intelectual. Que luego vino lo de masón, pues eso viene como una más, como algo natural, puesto que ellos asimilaron a los socialistas a los masones, a los comunistas a los masones, a los anarquistas a los masones, incluso a los teósofos, a los rotarios, a masones.
Being a Freemason is a sin. Being a Freemason is a shame. Being a Freemason means death.
La acusación de masón por Franco le sirvió lo mismo que le sirvió a Stalin con los trotskistas o a Hitler con los judíos. Cuando querían deshacerse de alguien de su entorno, incluso de su bando, pues Franco decía que era masón, Hitler que era judío y Stalin que era trotskista.
Salamanca is Francisco Franco's headquarters during the Spanish Civil War. Today it is home to the Centro Documental de la Memoria Histórica.
El Centro Documental de la Memoria Histórica pretende reparar a todas las víctimas de la dictadura franquista. Y la causa de que haya una sección completa dedicada a la masonería entra en ese concepto antimasónico de obsesivo que tenía Franco. Total, fichas de masones hay unas 80.000 aproximadamente, pero en el conjunto podemos hablar de 3 millones de represaliados, 3 millones de fichas que incluyen, ya digo, mujeres, hombres y niños.
At the onset of the 20th century, Spain is not a progressive country. The first signs of women's emancipation date back to the years of the Republic, but equality with men is still a long way off. And yet, unlike other Masonic institutions of Europe, Spanish lodges are open to women.
En la masonería femenina son fundamentalmente intelectuales. Es precisamente dentro de este terreno de mujeres intelectuales o de abogadas que tenemos que destacar el papel de Clara Campoamor, una masona que fue perseguida por el Tribunal Especial de Represión de la Masonería y el Comunismo. Gracias a ella se obtuvo el voto femenino.
The Centro Documental is a direct testimony to Franco's anti-Masonic obsession. There is something truly unexpected inside, a real museum locked behind heavy doors.
La logia que estamos viendo se crea en los años de la dictadura. Es una idea que pretende ridiculizar, mostrar el lado oculto de la masonería. Con todos los documentos incautados en la logia, con todos los efectos de los masones, de atributos, los mandiles, las joyas, los estandartes, el mobiliario, incluso con todo ello realizan esta reproducción de lo que ellos entienden que es un templo masónico, que desde luego no lo es una falsa logia porque no guarda los cánones que tiene que guardar un templo masónico.
An amusement park, a mirror gallery, a caricature of a layman's idea of a temple. It is not a true depiction.
Todos los muebles que podemos ver en esta reproducción de una logia, sillas, lámparas, cuadros colgados, todos son auténticos. Han sido incautados en diferentes logias a lo largo de todo el territorio español.
Why is it that despite the Phalangists' efforts, this fake temple was never opened to the public? More than 80 years after its construction, historians are still puzzled by the mystery. In the spring of 1945, while Franco is busy fighting Freemasonry, his allies collapse one after the other. Franco might have shown foresight by not dragging Spain into the Second World War, but now he stands alone against his enemies.
Franco vive muy mal el final de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, lo vive fatal, porque se ha producido en el entreacto, por un lado, la muerte de Mussolini y por otro, el suicidio de Hitler. Y él nota que ya no va tanta gente al Palacio del Pardo y se encuentra con una soledad tremenda. Han fallecido sus socios, sus amigos, han perdido la guerra y la han ganado los masones, porque Roosevelt es masón, el general Eisenhower es masón, el secretario general de Naciones Unidas es masón, el presidente del Consejo Europeo es masón, Churchill es masón. Es decir, los vencedores de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, él no se hace ninguna ilusión y los tiene en lista.
Spain is excluded from major international organizations created after the war, whose aim was to guarantee world peace and stability. To Franco, the reason is obvious.
Luego, tras la Segunda Guerra Mundial, se crea la ONU y España queda excluida. ¿Por qué queda excluida? Bueno, primero hay que pensar que para Franco, la anterior a la ONU, la SDN, la Sociedad de las Naciones, era un nido de masones. Y entonces, la ONU, que era un poco la heredera de esa otra organización, pues no iba a ser menos, era otro nido de masones. Si fue excluido de la ONU, para Franco es por culpa de los masones.
Soon, this new world born out of the ashes of fascism is enveloped by the Iron Curtain, which divides Europe in two. Western Europe under the influence of the United States on the one hand, and Eastern Europe under the influence of the Soviet Union on the other hand. Old alliances shift, driven by fear of communism, and no one can doubt Spain's opposition to communism. Old enemies unexpectedly become friends. Franco, eager to get back on the diplomatic scene, allows the United States to install military bases in his country in exchange for financial support, crucial for a country on the brink of starvation. And so, at the end of 1955, Spain is finally accepted into the United Nations. Thanks to the US financial aid, Francisco Franco remained in control of Spain until 1975, while his hatred for the Masons never waned.
Todo lo que en España y en Europa se ha armado obedece a una conspiración masónica y izquierdista en la clase política, en contubernio con la subversión comunista terrorista en lo social.
Right up to his last breath, Francisco Franco shouts out to the world his hatred for Freemasonry. He dies a few days after his last public appearance. Four years later, in 1979, Freemasonry is once again legal in Spain.